Can't tell you what dates to market calendars, but this will happen not too distant from now, after the MOTB is made mandatory.
We already have a very pretty sunrise that's underway, and we are going to see a lot of sunshine out there for today.
Yep, that doomsday clock is getting closer. Shalom! First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Shem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Shem, Rakakadash.
Where a nuclear weapon was to hit a major U.S. city like New York, the consequences would be devastating.
Double honors to the elders and apostles, great millstone, who are teaching this truth and sincerity. We've been telling you about this for some time. And a shout out to Yakim out there on the four corners of the earth proclaiming this truth. Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Shem Rakakadash, Barakatam. So, we've been telling you for quite some time. Now we will see this in our time. I can't tell you what date to mark your calendar, but we know it's right around the corner as they push the MOTB and engineer more false flags.
Not just for New York, but for the whole world. Today, we'll explore the domino effects of what could happen if this nightmare became a reality tomorrow. From the immediate impact to the long-term effects, we'll take a look at the potential devastation and how it would change our world forever. What would happen if a bomb like Little Boy, the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, was detonated in New York City? Little Boy had an explosive yield of approximately 15 kilotons of TNT. When it was dropped on Hiroshima, it resulted in catastrophic destruction and loss of life. If a similar bomb were to hit Manhattan, the impact would be similarly devastating, but on a much larger scale due to the city's density and population.
Dynamite!
The explosion would create an intense fireball, vaporizing everything within a radius of about 200 meters, or 650 feet. Skyscrapers,
and we're going to
buildings,
rejoice
and
in
people
this
within
day.
this zone
We fucking hate this place.
The blast wave would then radiate outwards, causing severe damage to structures up to 340 meters, or over 1,000 feet away, shattering windows and collapsing buildings. Heavily built concrete buildings are severely damaged or demolished. Fatalities approach 100%. The immediate death toll would certainly be in the tens of thousands, if not more. Beyond the immediate blast zone, the heat and firestorm would cause widespread fires, engulfing large parts of the city. The intense heat would cause third-degree burns to people within 11 square kilometers, or 4.4 square miles from ground zero. Third-degree burns extend throughout the layers of skin and are often painless because they destroy the pain nerves. They can cause severe scarring or disablement and can require amputation. The fallout, radioactive debris lifted into the atmosphere by the explosion, would spread out over a much larger area, carried by wind patterns. This radioactive fallout would contaminate the environment, making it hazardous for survivors and first responders.
What do you think a lithium battery does?
And the scale of destruction would make rescue efforts nearly impossible. Hospitals would be flooded, and the city's infrastructure would be shattered. The psychological impact on survivors would be enormous, and the city would face a long, difficult path to recovery, if recovery were even possible. However, such a scenario with a Little Boy atomic bomb detonating in New York is extremely unlikely. Only if terrorists could somehow get their hands on such a weapon could it happen, but the likelihood of that is very low. If a nuclear weapon were to detonate over New York City, it would most likely come from a nuclear-armed state, plunging the world into a possible nuclear world war. While New York City is a symbolic and economic hub, it lacks significant military targets, making it less likely to be a primary target in a nuclear conflict. Washington, D.C., with its concentration of political and military leadership, or U.S. nuclear silos, aimed at crippling the nation's nuclear arsenal, are more probable targets. Striking these locations would aim to dismantle the U.S. command structure and reduce its retaliatory capabilities. However, there is an incentive to deliberately target densely populated areas like New York to maximize civilian casualties and cause widespread panic and destabilization.
Yeah, they're called the weapons of his indignation.
Targeting. This approach aims to break the enemy's will to fight by inflicting massive civilian and
referred to as a lake of fire.
The US and Russia possess the world's largest nuclear arsenals.
And hell is just the grave.
Today, they continue to maintain and develop these formidable stockpiles, with Russia holding approximately 5,997 nuclear warheads, and
meaning
the US
that it was all burnt up
with 5,550. These numbers alone are staggering, but the
our place of death and hell will be destroyed. That's Babylon the Great.
Russia's arsenal includes the infamous Satan missile, known officially as the R-36. It has been a cornerstone of Russia's nuclear deterrent. However, it is the newer RS-28 Sarmat that truly represents the terrifying potential of modern nuclear technology. The RS-28 Sarmat, also known as the Satan II, is designed to carry multiple warheads and has the capacity to evade missile defenses, making it a potent tool of destruction. It can deliver up to 15 warheads anywhere in the world, ensuring that no target is beyond its reach. This means that a single missile can deliver 15 separate nuclear warheads to different targets. This capability is known as multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles, making the Satan II missile a highly destructive and versatile weapon, designed to overwhelm defenses and deliver catastrophic damage to multiple targets. Based on various reports and analyses by defense experts, the Satan II missile has a total payload capacity that can unleash a maximum energy anywhere from 15 to 50 megatons of TNT. Now, let's imagine the terrifying scenario on the lower end. A single Satan II missile is launched towards New York City, with each of its 15 warheads having a yield of 1 megaton of TNT. The Satan II missile can only be launched from land-based silos. If launched from the Uzhur missile base in southern Siberia, it would travel over 9,250 kilometers, or over 5,750 miles, to reach New York City. With a top speed of Mach 20, and taking into account the different phases of flight, it would reach New York in about 30 to 35 minutes. Even though it is extremely unlikely that a single missile would be used in a nuclear war scenario, for educational purposes, we will imagine that a Satan II missile is launched, and has now reached New York City to understand the raw power of such weapons. In our earlier example, we imagined a little boy atomic bomb detonating over New York City with an energy of 15 kilotons of TNT. Now consider the Satan II missile, which has 1,000 times that power at 15 megatons of TNT. If we thought it would be difficult for New York to recover from a little boy atomic bomb, there is no question that the RS-28 missile would utterly destroy the city. The largest US thermonuclear weapon ever detonated, Castle Bravo, had a 15 megaton energy release, providing data and simulations that help us understand the potential effects of a nuclear strike of this magnitude. If a Satan II missile, with its 15 megaton yield, were to detonate over New York City, the destruction would be catastrophic. The explosion would create a fireball with a radius of over 4 kilometers, or 2.6 miles, vaporizing everything within an area of over 50 square kilometers, or 19 square miles. The extreme heat would produce temperatures higher than the surface of the sun, incinerating buildings, vehicles, and people in an instant. Beyond the immediate fireball, the thermal radiation would cause third-degree burns up to 34 kilometers, or 21 miles away. This would encompass most of the New York metropolitan area, causing severe burns and igniting widespread fires that would be impossible to control. While the biggest payload capability of a US missile is found in the Trident II submarine-launched ballistic missile, or SLBM, the Trident II can carry multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles, each with a nuclear warhead. Typically, it can be equipped with up to 8 warheads, each with a yield of around 475 kilotons, although it can theoretically carry up to 14 warheads, depending on the configuration and the mission requirements. This makes the Trident II one of the most powerful and flexible delivery systems in the US nuclear arsenal. If the US were to launch a Trident II missile against Moscow, the most plausible launch sites would be from submarines in the Black Sea or the Baltic Sea. While the Black Sea is an option, the Baltic Sea, often referred to as Lake NATO, is more likely due to its proximity to Moscow. The distance from the Baltic Sea to Moscow is just over 700 kilometers, or about 430 miles, considering the missile's top speed of Mach 24, approximately 29,000 kilometers per hour, or 18,000 miles per hour, and accounting for the various flight phases, it would likely reach Moscow in just over 10 minutes. Upon detonation, the missile's multiple warheads, each with a yield of up to 475 kilotons, would create immense destruction. The initial blast would generate a fireball with temperatures hotter than the sun, vaporizing everything within a radius of several kilometers. The shockwave would flatten buildings and infrastructure over a wide area, while the intense heat would ignite fires causing further damage. The electromagnetic pulse, or EMP, generated by the explosion would disable electronic devices and communications over a vast area, compounding the chaos. The combined effects of the blast, heat, radiation, and EMP would result in catastrophic loss of life and infrastructure, effectively crippling Moscow and severely impacting Russia's ability to function as a nation. During the Cold War and beyond, there have been discussions and plans involving the use of nuclear weapons to create catastrophic events like tsunamis. One such Soviet project, codenamed Lavina, meaning avalanche, aimed to create an artificial tsunami using a massive explosion, intended to cause significant casualties and damage to coastal cities. This project was conceived as an alternative to traditional nuclear weapons, leveraging the destructive power of a massive wave to wipe out enemy coastal cities. There has been speculation and discussion about the possibility of using a nuclear weapon to also trigger an eruption of the Yellowstone supervolcano. However, scientific consensus indicates that this scenario is highly unlikely. the energy required to trigger an eruption far exceeds what a nuclear detonation could provide. Therefore, while the idea is theoretically dramatic, it lacks practical feasibility. What didn't lack practicality was the Tsar Bomba. It was the most powerful nuclear weapon ever detonated, with a yield of 50 megatons of TNT. This Soviet bomb was tested on October 30th, 1961, over the Novaya Zemlya archipelago in the Arctic Ocean. The blast could be seen from 1,000 kilometers away, as far as Norway. The shockwave from the explosion circled the Earth 3 times, and windows were shattered up to 900 kilometers from the blast site. Now imagine the Tsar Bomba detonating over New York City. The fireball alone would incinerate everything within over a 5-kilometer or over 3-mile radius, vaporizing buildings and infrastructure instantly. Heavy blast damage would spread over a radius of 9 kilometers, covering over 250 square kilometers, or about 100 square miles, resulting in the total destruction of most buildings and severe injuries to anyone in this zone. Moderate blast damage would extend even further, up to 20 kilometers, covering a staggering 1,350 square kilometers, or over 500 square miles. In this area, most residential buildings would collapse from overpressure, causing universal injuries and widespread fatalities. The chances of fires starting in commercial and residential buildings would be extremely high, and these fires would spread rapidly due to the extensive damage. The optimal height of burst to maximize these effects would be 11.5 kilometers, or over 7 miles, ensuring the greatest possible area of devastation. Thermal radiation from the explosion would cause third-degree burns up to 60 kilometers, or 37 miles away. The intense heat would ignite fires over this vast area, adding to the overall destruction. The Tsar Bomba was never designed as a practical weapon, but rather to demonstrate the sheer power that could be unleashed. Some experts believe that the higher end of the yield range for the Satan II missile reaches 50 megatons, exactly the yield of the Tsar Bomba, making this scenario even more terrifying. Since the Tsar Bomba could be seen from as far as Norway, a nuclear weapon with a 50 megaton energy detonation over New York City would be visible all the way to Columbia, South Carolina, and would shatter windows across Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Michigan, and up north reaching Quebec, Canada. This is the power of just a single nuclear weapon with a 50 megaton explosion. Witnessing such a terrifying scenario over New York City would certainly mean the end of civilization as we know it, as the retaliation response would trigger a global nuclear war, leading to unimaginable destruction and loss of life.
And that's what the future is. They're called the weapons of his indignation. The nuclear war is inevitable. World War III is around the corner. It's also known as the third woe that cometh quickly. Telegram founder Pavel Durov released from jail on $5 million bail. Faces criminal charges. Telegram founder was released from jail on Wednesday, but indicted on 6 charges related to allegedly illegal activity on the social media platform and forbidden from leaving France. So he's going to be detained in France. Telegram co-founder has been released from jail, but on bail, forbidden from leaving France, and must check in with French police twice a week. So like an SOR, supervised on release. That's what SOR is. So, and we already know about the Venezuelan gangs. That's all, you know, being done on purpose, you know. So like everything else, though, there's a reason for it. Is because, of course, you know, the political ramifications of it. So Macron is kind of turning against the West a little bit by sort of backing down from this, as this video goes into.
Emmanuel Macron, during his speech in Belgrade, said that this is not about political persecution of Durov, but about legal proceedings. I think the next question to Macron will be, what is it like to be in the place of those whom you groundlessly accused yesterday of what you are doing today?
Back before the French state considered Telegram founder Pavel Durov a pariah facing preliminary charges on everything from aiding and abetting drug trafficking to organized crime and propagation of child porn, because simply founding an app apparently now means that you're literally driving the getaway car for every criminal that happens to use it. Durov somehow found the time in his busy crime spree to dine with French President Emmanuel Macron.
6 years before Pavel Durov landed in a French holding cell, the anti-establishment founder of the messaging app Telegram was in a very different position in France, having lunch with President Emmanuel Macron. At the lunch in 2018, which hasn't been previously reported, Macron invited the Russian-born Durov to move Telegram to Paris. People familiar with the discussion said. Durov declined at the time. The French leader even discussed granting French citizenship to him. One of the people said,
It sounds like Macron, the leader of Le Startup Nation, was all up in Durov's grill, talking about making it official with a naturalization that was mysteriously fast-tracked, and also proposing that Telegram be moved to France. When pressed about that naturalization, Macron just said that it's something that he personally does, basically for rich guys who make an effort to speak French.
In terms of naturalization, it is indeed a decision that we made in 2018, as I recall, which was taken in a completely assumed strategy to allow men and women who are artists, athletes, entrepreneurs to become citizens after they make the effort to learn the French language. These are people who develop wealth and innovation in the world, and they are welcome to become French citizens. So I made sure that Mr. Durov became one of them, just like I did with Mr. Spiegel, an American entrepreneur, as well as some actors and athletes. I am in a state of law where justice operates independently.
So what happened here? Well, let's just say that they initially really liked his branding. A Russian who had a spat with Moscow over the app, which in their branding stands for freedom. And it was briefly banned in 2018 in Russia, sparking protests around the country in favor of a free internet, complete with paper airplane props symbolizing Telegram's logo. Now, this is the kind of thing that can be leveraged by the State Department that's constantly trying to parlay any unrest into regime change. Says who? An actual former State Department official.
Telegram is this very, very powerful vehicle for the U.S. State Department to be able to mobilize protests, to be able to galvanize political support. The National Endowment for Democracy was actually paying the main administrators of the Telegram channels who were orchestrating those riots, those protests.
Not employees of Telegram, but people by
channel administrators.
People are using it or organizing others to use it.
Right. U.S. and French shared military intelligence and diplomatic and economic interests in arresting Pavel and finally getting the leverage they've craved for so long to be able to both control Telegram's content moderation practice, but also the ability to get this back-end access to read every Russian text message effectively.
Telegram apparently featured so prominently as an activist tool in the Iranian protests in January 2018 as the most popular messaging app in that country that it ended up being permanently banned just a few months later under the pretext of national security. So it's around this time that Durov is being wined and dined by Macron, according to the French press, with Macron really not seeming to mind what was brewing behind Telegram's cloak of encryption as long as it was causing problems for others. Now, around that time, Macron was also like, hey, why don't you get your little app over here? And he was pretty much pressuring Durov to relocate the app to France. Meanwhile, Telegram went on to help activists communicate with each other during the Western-backed protests in Hong Kong against Beijing, which, of course, were framed by the Western press as totally organic and leaderless, because the U.S., of course, has absolutely no interest in using Hong Kong or Taiwan against China, as we've seen over and over again. But more recently, the app has been linked to this summer's anti-migrant unrest in Britain and has started to come under fire from Western governments like Spain, Norway, and Germany. As it proliferates across the globe, it's really not hard to see how the same Western governments that applaud its role as a facilitator of democracy in other countries may not appreciate it doing the same at home, to the point where it suddenly becomes convenient to point out that it's not just freedom-fighting activists who are cruising down Telegram's encrypted information highway, but also an assortment of sex pests, terrorists, and money launderers. And just as conveniently, any roadblocks that they're able to set up through lawfare against Durov or otherwise would just happen to allow them to peer right into everyone's car window.
Yep, information is dangerous. Friendly fire fiasco. Ukraine army shoots down its own F-16 jet, and the pilot was killed. It appears that the U.S.-made F-16 jet was handed over to Ukraine earlier this year, down by Ukraine Patriot air defense system. So that Patriot missile defense system, which is crap, just shut down their own plane. Dumbass. In a friendly fire incident, Ukraine lawmaker said, cited by TASS. According to my information, the F-16 and the Ukraine Ployag Alexei Moonfish was shot down by the Patriot anti-aircraft missile system due to lack of coordination between the military units, she wrote on Telegram. In other words, their system sucks. Lawmaker criticized the Air Force of the Ukraine Armed Forces for falsely describing the incident as a crash. So they shut down their own shit. And like everything else, though, this is a little prediction here, a spoiler alert. No one ready for what's coming this fall as Gerald Celente, who's an insider, gets on Redacted.
Well, in the past few weeks, billionaire Warren Buffett has sold billions of dollars in stock for cash. And over the past 24 hours, he's done it once again, selling 981 million shares of Bank of America. He's now sitting on $278 billion in cash. He knows a crash is coming, and so does our next guest, who's been predicting it for many, many months. He's the leading trends forecaster in America, our friend Gerald Celente, the head of the Trends Journal. He's been predicting America's trends for decades. He nailed, of course, the 2008 collapse, among other collapses, well ahead of everyone else when everyone was saying, that's just garbage. But Gerald was saying, pay attention to what's happening, and Gerald joins us now. Gerald, great to see you, as always, here on the show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, and thank you for the kind words.
Well, your front page of the New Trends Journal is out this week, and here it is, and it shows Kamala Harris over the dead body, basically, of the Statue of Liberty. Harris selling freedom as her political gang kills freedom. But I wanted to go to page 131 of the Trends Journal, Gerald, because I want to start here. Trends in the markets. You are being scammed and robbed blind on an unimaginable scale. It's about to get much worse, you write. So let's talk about the market. How is it about to get much worse, and how are we being scammed right now?
No one hardly is talking about this at all. You just mentioned about Warren Buffett selling all those shares of Bank of America. Did you see what happened this week at the Bank of Montreal? Oh, the shares are only down 7%. Well, how come? Well, because the, let's see, it's in the Trends Journal this week. Today, because of its overexposure to commercial real estate, the Bank of Montreal shares tanked some 7% as we go to press. This is just the beginning. The worst is yet to come. Commercial real estate. Let's look at the facts. Not too long ago, in 2020, the politicians declared, quote, the COVID war. That's what they all called it. They called it a war. We're going to war. We're going to war. We're going to war. And just as people march off to war all the time, when they call war, they marched off to the war. What did they say? You can't go to work. Get into your house. You can't go out. Now people are staying home week after week, month after month, year after year. And they're saying to themselves, I'm getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to commute an hour and a half each way, spending all this money. I can't believe I was doing this. I'm not going to do it anymore. Now I'm the guy that has, let's say, 10 stories in a building. And I say, I got these people in cubicles. I don't see them anyway. Let them work at home. Let them come in a couple of days a week. Your office occupancy rate, according to Castle Systems with a K, is 48.8%. People aren't going back to work. And people that have the buildings that are renting them, they're not renewing their leases. You have $4 trillion worth of commercial real estate loans coming up over the next 2 years. And again, the data's all there, but nobody's reporting on it. Because there's going to be the office building bust that we had forecast would happen. We said this would happen, by the way, in May of 2020. No one's talking about it because the banks are going to go bust. There's going to be massive defaults on loans. And let's go back. Tracking trends is an understanding of how we got here, where we are, and where we're going. And the current events form the future trends. So let's go back to 2020. Don't worry about it. You don't have to go to work. Here's free money. We're going to bring those interest rates down to zero and pump in trillions of dollars of fake money backed by nothing and printed on nothing. So here's the deal. The banks got all that dough as people were staying at home and putting their money in the banks. And what did they do? They bought treasuries. Oh, when interest rates were down at zero? And now they have all these defaults coming in on bank loan, on office building loans that no one is talking about, that they're not going to be able to cover. Why do you think the Bank of Montreal stock went down? Why do you think Buffett is bailing out? We are going to have a banking bust crisis, the likes of which we've never seen in the history of the world, part one or part two.
And these small regional banks are going to be the ones that get hit first.
And that's what's going to bring in the impending you-know-what.
That are defaulting and being gobbled up. Not a week goes by, Gerald, as you know, where these small banks aren't being gobbled up by the big guys.
That's right. Oh, you could thank, the crime syndicate, Bill Clinton, remember the Glass-Steagall Act, one, and then one after another. And they did away with the Glass-Steagall Act, Robson Batman Act, Sherman Antitrust Act, Clayton Antitrust Act. All we are plantation workers of slave landia. The robber barons own the country. One of the covers of the Trends Journal, got no money, got no cash, can't run for office. Robber barons are in control, basically. So now let's go back to the office building bust. In 2006, you worked in New York, and this isn't far from where you used to be, on 135 West 50th Street, Midtown. A building that sold for $332 million in 2006 went up for auction 3 weeks ago. They sold for $8.5 million.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
This is Midtown. So the building is in the middle of the street, right? The buildings that they built for the last 50 years are non-convertible to housing. They're empty spaces. So now the building's in the middle of the street. You got no back, you got no sides. All you got is a front. You can't convert this into housing. That's why it went for $8.5 million, and that's everywhere. You're looking at an office vacancy rate. Nobody there. In San Francisco, almost 35%. Before the COVID war, it was 3.5%. Your office vacancy rate in the largest cities in America, 24%. Vacant. So now there's going to be huge defaults. Nobody's talking about this. And again, why do you think gold prices are going up? It was one of our top trends for 2024. Golden year for gold. Gold prices have only gone up about $500 an ounce since we made that forecast. Again, going back to what Buffett is doing. I mean, the guy's the pro of pros in the business. And he's selling out of the banking system. The banksters are going to go bust. And even the big ones, by the way. The JP Morgan Chase gang, one after another. I call them a gang because they convicted, what, 5 felonies? 5 felonies? One of them rigging the precious metals market? You got to find the grand total of $900 million in 2019. They don't go to jail, by the way. No. They don't get a slap on their wrist. It's persecution to the fullest for we the little people and a slap on the wrist for the gang running the show.
Now, I know you're a huge fan of the Fed. You're a huge fan of Jerome Powell. A big piece of the Trends Journal this week, and I really want to get into this because I think this is going to affect everyone watching our show right now. What happens with these rate cuts in the fall? Obviously, inflation up. They had to revise those job numbers, those fake and phony jobs numbers that the Biden and Harris administration were pushing out there about a strong labor market. So we know that it's not a strong labor market. But also, we now know that the time, as you write, the time has come for Powell in the fall here with these interest rate cuts. What do you see happening? What is your prognostication here, your trends forecasting for the fall of 2024 into the new year of 2025 for the American people?
Well, for the American people, life is just going to keep getting worse. Again, the bigs on everything. One of the columns we have every week, bigs getting bigger. We show all the M&A, merger and acquisition activity. Going back to Powell. This is the clown boy, along with Janet Yellen, the former Fed head, that's now our Treasury Secretary, that said there's no inflation, it's only temporary. No, it's only transitory. And now in this new world, we could call it transgendatory. Let's really be stupid about it. So now, they're going to cut interest rates. And again, we thought they would cut them earlier. And again, going back to Yellen, she's our Treasury Secretary. What was her last job? She was the Fed head. You mean the Fed head's our Treasury Secretary? They want to keep the people in power in power. Simple as that. They're running the show right in front of your eyes. They're going to lower interest rates and do everything they can to boost up the economy. Everything. And when they lower interest rates, inflation is going to start going back up. But also, the lower interest rates fall, the deeper the dollar declines. The dollar is only high because of the high interest rates. I mean, you talk about it all the time. The debt levels that the United States has, what is it, like every 100 days it's increasing $1 trillion?
Right.
They're going to artificially prop up the economy in the run-up to the presidential reality show in November. They're going to do everything they can. So again, the deeper the dollar falls, the higher gold prices go. Gold prices could go to $3,000 an ounce this year. Because the other big issues to look at is the ramping up of the Ukraine war and the Israel war. And that's why people are going to safe haven assets. And again, as you well know, there are no advertisements in the Trends Journal. We don't give financial advice, so nobody's telling us what to say or what to do. We're giving the facts and the implications and the forecasts. So these wars, people, the major story.
Are we heading for World War III? I mean, we keep saying it. It's already begun. So that's what our audience is. I say all the time, when you have Americans who are literally dying in Ukraine, and they are, and we're hearing that now from former CIA agents, that's the case, and you have Americans dying in Gaza, you have half of the U.S. Navy in the Middle East right now. How is this not in the middle of a world war?
Again, the people don't have a clue of what's going on. This is from, again, when you subscribe to the Trends Journal and you put in your code, it's cost about $2.50 a week. This is the weekend edition of the Wall Street Journal. $6. Lost in 15 minutes. Tragedy in the Mediterranean. The masts seem to tilt, then disappear. Prosecutors look into possible criminal negligence in the sinking of Mike Lynch's yacht. What the hell do I care about this crap? Who the hell is Mike Lynch? If your mother dies, your father dies, your sister dies, your brother dies, who gives a damn? Oh no, but Mike Lynch died, and it's every damn day in the news for over a week.
Yeah.
The people don't have a clue of what's going on. Again, we did this whole thing in our Trends Journal this week about how they kept going on and on with the stories. I'm not making this up. Lost in 15 minutes.
Or
Tragedy
about
in the
the Will
Mediterranean.
Smith
Wall Street
slap,
Journal.
right?
Divers recovers 7th body. Financial Times. Italian authorities open manslaughter investigation into super yacht. CNN, the Cartoon News Network. U.S. tech tycoon among 6 missing after yacht sinks. BBC. But bullshit. Yeah. From August 19th to August 25th. All right,
Yeah.
people have no clue of what's going on. All they're getting are sound bites from the prostitutes, the media whores that get paid to put out by their corporate pimps and their government whoremasters. Go to your Trends Journal. We've been warning now for a little over a year. Ukraine is going to strike a Russian nuclear power plant.
Yeah,
There it did.
they are.
There it did.
Yep.
It just happened. And we now know, and according to the Trends Journal, that there are going to be deeper attacks inside of Russia at the hands of the Ukrainians. That is coming. Zelensky puts out his fake peace plan. They're agitating towards a war with Iran right now. So all of this is coming to fruition right now as we head into the 2024 election.
Yeah. And again, I'm having a peace rally up here at Kingston. I'm having Judge Napolitano, Scott Ritter, Max Blumenthal, Anya Parenthal, and others. I'm fighting for peace. I'm a warrior for the Prince of Peace. Again, you mentioned my trend forecast, and I made my name when I called the 1987 stock market crash, the dot-com bust, the Asian currency crisis, but other things, for bottled water trends to clean food. The New York Times, I coined that term. So on and on. I mean, we're looking at the whole world over here. We're going to, this is serious stuff. Again, Israel's going to keep ramping up this war. You read the op-ed piece in Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, this past Sunday, by top guys in Israel, warning that Israel is going to destroy itself by ramping up these wars. Again, you don't have to be a rocket science to figure this out. What are there, about 9 million people living in Israel and 91 million up in Iran? I mean, these are the Persians. They're not, these are very advanced society. This war goes, they keep attacking and shooting things into Iran. This thing is going to escalate. And as you pointed out, the United States has all these ships that they're bringing in there, these aircraft carriers, and one after another. And that little clown Kirby, the mouthpiece, came out for the United States, said the United States is going to defend Israel if Iran attacks.
So Americans being used as cannon fodder. That's exactly what's going to happen.
Yep.
And again, this is
Place
like
the
business.
flux
Yeah.
and draw them in. This is
It is our true
exciting.
policy to steer clear of permanent alliance with any portion of the foreign world. The nation which indulges toward another in an habitual hatred or an habitual fondness is in some degree a slave. Is a slave to its animosity or to its affection. That's George Washington's farewell address.
Right.
And now you got these little clown boys that couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag. There's a real guy that fought, saying we got to get involved in all these wars. You want to go over there and go support the war? Go over there and fight. Go over there. This clown, Lindsey Graham. They keep this little boy over and over and over again. We have to do to Iran this and that. This guy couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag. One after another. So anyway, this is very serious. There's going to be a
very serious
big event that's going to get us into this.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. A false flag event. You're predicting a false flag event. We've been predicting it here on the show. We don't run the Trends Journal, but we've been saying they're going to use a false flag in order to drag us into a war with Iran. That's exactly what's going to happen.
Yep.
Whether it's a USS Liberty style attack or something else. Why is half of the American Navy right now positioned in the Middle East? Half. They're all sitting ducks. They're waiting for a false flag attack in order for us to be dragged into this war, and it'll probably happen. I'm no trends forecaster, but it'll probably happen before the election. What do you want to bet? I'll bet you. Yep. I'll bet you, Gerald.
Yep. And there's something else too. I think that there's a good opportunity that Biden is going to say, that I'm not feeling very well, and we're going to turn the presidency over to Kamala Harris. So now she'll be running as president.
Yes.
And I didn't know this until 2 years ago. As I always say, when all else fails, they take it to war. What followed the Great Depression? World War II. What followed the dot-com bust? The War on Terror. You could Google this up. Franklin Roosevelt seizes Japanese assets. This is what comes up. Mainstream news, history, today. You ready? On July 26th, again, false flag event. On July 26th, President Franklin Roosevelt seizes all Japanese assets in the United States. You know why? Those dirty Japanese, in retaliation for the Japanese occupation of French Indochina. Wait a minute. What the hell are the French doing in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, and you got the nerve to call it French Indochina? You're robbing their rubber, their tin, rape, pillage, stealing. How dare those Japanese go in there? You read the article, along with the United Kingdom and the Dutch and the United States, they cut off 88% of Japan's oil. They only import 100%. And 3/4 of their global trade. Can't understand why they bombed Pearl Harbor. I haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, and we pretend we didn't know about Pearl Harbor well ahead of time. Talk about another false flag.
Exactly.
Talk about another false flag. Gerald, thank you for dropping truth bombs on us as always. Our audience loves you. I love you. I think what you guys do at the Trends Journal is very important, and one of the few like our show who is anti-war and pro-peace, and that's
another thing. Yes, we want the destruction of Babylon, but that's because at the end of the day, this is the final war, the third woe that cometh quickly. Once this war happens, it's over. Because we, as Israelites, do not want war either. We're people of peace too. And I believe that deep down, because I know Apostle Dahara said it too, that Gerald Celente is an Israelite foreigner, Because again, our seed line is going to be through all of it. We're going to look like the other nations, which include Amalek. So because I believe Paul Simon's an Israelite, an Israelite foreigner. I definitely believe Neil Diamond is too, We're going to have seed out in the whole world. So it's not about what you look like, it's whether your seed goes back to being an Israelite, So, like everything else though, the third woe is coming quickly. Least the flock shall draw everyone in. You can see the writings on the wall. It's right around the corner. And hey, they're going to put a pause in the ongoing slaughter for a few days because the World Health Organization says. Now, I'll go more into that on the longer length of this. I just cannot talk about that here, right? But what we are starting to see, though, is that indeed, he enlarges his desire as hell, and his death cannot be satisfied, right? So, Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 2. The Most High answered and said unto me, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. So you're supposed to be in fear, that, okay, I got to get right because shit's starting to happen, That's the way you're supposed to act, right? When you know that everything you're reading and everything that's in the news and all that is lining up, you should be in fear of the Most High. He's like, well, I got to get right before this happens, right? You should have gotten right before, but nonetheless, though, you still have an option to get right with the Most High. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come and it will not tarry. Again, the third woe, and of course the MOTB, which is around the corner. Because, of course they're going to cause the market to crash. That's what Gerald Celente mostly talks about, is the crash. Because the crash will come. They're going to engineer that. So that way they can have bank bail-ins, which he's talked a lot about that too. And they're going to just engineer a new funny system. Well, not so funny. They want to implant you with a device so they can track your every movement. Joe Biden even says it in his earlier speeches. Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. That's talking about the righteous and the wicked. Which we know the soul is lifted up, not upright, is talking about the Edomites. Yea, also because he transgresses by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and as death cannot be satisfied, but gather unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. All he does is destroy everything, and he's destroyed the entire world. He's made everyone miserable. Shall not all these take a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his. How long? And to him that layeth himself with thick clay, which is heavy debt. The scheme, his printing money out of thin air, just pretty much all his lies. Because when you write a check and it's no good, you're lying to that person. You're deceiving that person. That's all that Esau does. He's a liar and he's a thief. And these people want payback. They want retribution. And the Most High is going to help them get retribution. And that's why they're going to be dragged into this valley Yehoshaphat, which is right there in Syria and the Middle East. That's why you're hearing about the future war with Iran. So hopefully this has all been edifying. Like I said, there's more in the long and length of this. Then I would say Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Shem Rakakadash, Wa Abababal. Brakatam, Jehovah elect. Shalom.